I've got 3 words for you. Fractional orbital bombardment. Check this out. A rocket launches into low Earth orbit, goes partway around the globe, and then descends back through the atmosphere. That's when it gets really wild. The first rocket launches a glide vehicle that rushes to its target at hypersonic speed. Oh, I almost forgot. There's a nuclear warhead on it. China's tested this delivery system, and US intelligence claims conducted a secret nuclear test too, which China denies. Are US officials worried about this?
Yeah, they're definitely worried about this.
And worldwide, the number of deployed warheads is thought to be increasing.
All 9 nuclear weapon states are engaged in massive military modernizations of their nuclear arsenals.
Here's why it might be time to start worrying about the new nuclear arms race. Let's start with a number, 15. That's how many minutes a US president has to decide whether to launch a nuclear counterstrike, according to an opinion piece published in the New York Times in partnership with the Nuclear Threat Initiative. Here's a hypothetical scenario. US space-based radar detects launch of a nuclear-armed missile. That alerts ground radar, which confirms the launch, which takes a couple minutes. And then the defense secretary, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, or other officials would brief the president. It's the president who has the sole statutory authority to greenlight a US launch. So in those few minutes, the president decides, strike back? And if he or she says yes, an overwhelming salvo of intercontinental ballistic missiles can be airborne in as little as 5 minutes, alongside sea-launched missiles and air-launched missiles and bombs. I get it, sounds like Hollywood hyperbole. But it's not. The ability to launch on such a short timeline might have troubling implications, but it's a feature, not a bug. What the US military wants is the perception that if you strike first against the US, you'll get hit so hard, so fast, that you'll wish you hadn't launched in the first place. But that threat relies on something crucial: detecting the incoming attack.
What we're seeing today is the development of emerging technologies that could threaten many of the early warning systems that the US has fielded historically.
Remember fractional orbital bombardment? Well, it's specifically designed to evade detection, because it can fly
over the South Pole, which would circumvent the US ballistic missile defense and radar systems that are pointing towards the north to counter the traditional threats that we have faced.
We'll get back to China in a minute, but Russia has its own set of troubling nuclear technology. Meet Poseidon.
An underwater autonomous vehicle that is essentially kind of look like a torpedo. It's nuclear powered, and the goal is to actually create what the Russians have described it as creating a tsunami that can, destroy coastlines.
So this sort of science fiction nuclear weapon is really geared towards targeting civilization and a way of life. It's ultimately perceived as a doomsday weapon.
It's science fiction, but it's real?
President Putin just tested Poseidon earlier in 2025. President Putin also outlined a number of other destabilizing nuclear weapons that use emerging technologies. For example, he talked about Burevestnik, which is a nuclear-powered, nuclear-tipped cruise missile. This nuclear weapon could fly, theoretically, unlimited range because instead it's powered by a nuclear reactor. There are massive risks to this weapon.
The risks of a forever roaming nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed missile seem obvious. One is that it could evade US missile defense by flying too low for radar and effectively shorten that decision-making window we talked about earlier.
Yeah, so Russia started developing these novel weapon systems, or thinking about it, after the US withdrew from the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty in 2002.
The Kremlin, fortress of communist doctrine, is the setting of an historic event.
This is about when you might be thinking, what about all those nuclear treaties and bans that the US and Russia and other countries around the world have signed? Well, in short, they're eroding.
During the Cold War, the US and the Soviet Union also negotiated arms control agreements that placed various limits on the technology and also the deployment of certain systems. This was a way for both the US and the Soviet Union to have some level of predictability, some limitations on competition, and to manage this kind of very fraught landscape.
And that created a lot of trust that enabled a greater degree of confidence that we weren't under threat of imminent nuclear attack.
But in recent years, the clear lines delineating the rules have been disappearing.
In 2019, the Trump administration decided to withdraw from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. This treaty put limits, restricted the placement of ground-launched intermediate-range ballistic missiles in Europe. And in 2020, 1 year later, the Trump administration decided to withdraw from the Open Skies Treaty. In 2023, Russia decided to de-ratify the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. In 2026, just last month, the New START Treaty expired between the United States and Russia. The New START Treaty put limits between the US and Russia's strategic arsenals at 1,550 nuclear weapons. Now, in the aftermath of the collapse of New START, it is likely that the United States and Russia will start to upload or increase the size of their strategic arsenals.
And when it comes to China, they have a lot of catching up to do in terms of the numbers of nuclear weapons they have. And the US believes China is developing tactical nuclear weapons.
The reason that is significant is because tactical nuclear weapons would be used in short-range capacity.
Potentially to be used alongside conventional warfare.
China has denied it. And we should also note that they have a no first use policy in China as well. That's been in place for decades. But I also think that without those treaties and controls in place, it's just a lot more dangerous, because the concern with foreign policy conflict is always escalation.
In late 2025, President Trump ordered the Department of Defense to begin testing nuclear weapons on an equal basis as other nations.
3, 2, 1.
Nuclear scientists aren't quite sure what that means exactly, but the US hasn't conducted a nuclear test since 1992.
Just think of the ramifications globally. If the United States starts testing nuclear weapons again, countries around the world are going to be concerned about what that means for the future of the arms race globally.
The bedrock of all international agreements is the Non-Proliferation Treaty, a deal which entered into force in 1970, wherein countries with nuclear weapons would decrease their arsenals and countries without them wouldn't try to get them. Now, that's in danger too.
We went from this Cold War height of 64,000 weapons to the 13,000 or so today, and that trend is being reversed. That is causing many states to question whether the grand bargain of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is still something that they want to support.
So we talk about nuclear weapons, but really the underlying issue is a world order where the diplomatic relationships and agreements might not necessarily be in place anymore.
Obviously, nuclear weapons are a unique type of technology, right? There's no other weapon that has this kind of level of lethality. But fundamentally, nuclear politics are all about the real actual underlying relations that define them. So it's also a reflection of the international system today.